Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Welcome to today's Grain Blast. What day is it? It's Thursday, the 21st of October. As you may have just guessed, these are recorded live, so apologies for any swearing you may hear, usually from me. I'm
No,
the
it's not.
potty
It's
mouth.
always me.
It's always me. As usual, we are here with the gorgeous, the glamorous, the goddess of grain, Angie Setzer, where Angie will be providing us with a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving using grain markets. But before we get on to the exciting stuff, I'll do the boring stuff. Nothing discussed on the podcast is ever trading or investment advice. We are not endorsed by anyone. Take us as we come. Please bear with us, especially my silly questions that kind of occasionally pop up. Although Angie does promise me that there's no such thing as a stupid question, although I do test that sometimes. But anyway, speaking of Angie, over to the good lady herself. Welcome.
You forget, in a past life, I ran four were my direct responsibility, grain elevators with employees, and had 7 to 10 truckers that I was responsible for at any given time. So yes, you are correct. There is no such thing as a stupid question. And you are not the one to really challenge that in my experience so far, at least. So,
I
yeah, it is
appreciate that.
Thursday all day long until midnight tonight, they tell me. Yeah, market wise here, we've got continued strength in soybeans, which a lot of people are kind of shocked, surprised,
Confused about.
hopeful, right? And this is what I mean. I think it kind of makes sense on. I hope it makes sense now and why I was screaming so loud ahead of harvest that we were really kind of being dramatic about the situation. You know, the cash market did its job. You know, my friend Boyd sent over earlier today. I'm going to see if I can find it real quick. The month over month basis gains, you know, and you look at the bean basis, you know, versus a month ago, CIF, your Gulf values, 37 cents higher. ADM Decatur, 48 cents higher. Claypool, 25 cents higher. Fostoria and Quincy join in with that. You're looking at Cargill and Owensboro, Kentucky, 47 cents higher. Mississippi, 40 cents higher. I mean, you're talking about some pretty massive shifts in market structure. Now, that's the Eastern Corn Belt, but even in the Western Belt, yes, there are signs. You know, you've got plentiful supplies in Nebraska, parts of Iowa, you know, though you are seeing a firming of Iowa bean basis as well and a few other things. And so, you know, I think really when it comes down to it, a lot of folks are trying to determine right now what the situation is at hand. You know, did the farmer really put that many beans away? Girlfriend, no. Like the farmer didn't have that capacity. You know, we didn't completely bastardize corn space for soybeans. Like, do we have more beans on the farm in some places and maybe more? And I don't know. I don't think we have more beans commercially, but we could have more beans on the farm. The commercial is the one that's getting a little panicky in the sense that, you know, they still have some empty space. And so that still remains the biggest focus right now
Right.
and is still really kind of supporting the bean market at this point, is kind of trying to determine, okay, we obviously know production was smaller. How much smaller? You know, how much is being kept out of the pipeline by the farmer? And what will it take futures wise for us to kind of discover that? You know, because there is going to be a value that the farmer becomes a seller again. The hardest part, though, right now is one thing that the market's going to have to contend with that a lot of people don't realize is that November is a month of a hangover. You know, like the farmer just basically put the crop away, especially across much of the Corn Belt, and in a handful of weeks. It was probably one of the record fastest harvests, or in line with it if we had crop progress reports open, you know, and going on. And so when it comes to talking to them about moving grain next month, like you better come prepared is what I'm saying, because they're not going to give it away. And so that'll be the big thing in the short term, or what we're watching kind of is a continuation of just spreads, basis, and what that all means from a cash standpoint. We obviously have, you know, we're watching the Russian sanctions and the situation between Russia and Trump. I think Trump kind of caught on that maybe he was being played a little. I think Putin, you know, we talked about that earlier this week where he was kind of giving off college boyfriend energy. Like, I see you're getting a little too close to the other guy. And so I think that was part of, you know, Putin was like, hey, let's try to work something out. And then you had that bad bad. I'm using air quotes. This is just based on reports. Conversation between Rubio and Lavrov. Like, did you see anything further on that? Like, basically, it was just kind of like the meeting's off after that. Like, and it was more Rubio, I think, that said it, but it wasn't a good sign
No,
anyway.
no. But this is the thing. It's like Trump's rhetoric or the administration's rhetoric regarding Putin changes like the weather.
All
Um,
the time.
yeah,
Again,
it was
it's like it's really college boyfriend-esque,
yeah,
right? Like, you
exactly
know what I
how
mean?
you said it. Was it yesterday, the day before when you used that analogy? And it's perfect because all of a sudden now meeting's off because I don't like Putin anymore and he's pulling his, he's not, he's
Yeah.
pulling back from what he said. Not only that, but we've had these sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil, which, to be fair, probably I'm I've never been a big fan of sanctions because of purely because I think the way they're implemented is normally absolute bollocks and
Mhm.
they target the wrong things. But fair play to the administration this time. They have targeted two of the biggest revenue generating streams for Russia and the Russian government, and they've hit them potentially where it hurts. They've also gone after India and China and said, look, you've got to stop buying Russian oil. And we saw a headline just now from China saying they're going to start to look to stop.
Yeah.
India over the last couple of days said the same thing. And the
Yeah.
interesting thing is this is only the second sanctions package under this Trump administration.
Mhm.
And they have hit them where where it hurts Putin, in my opinion. But this is also, funny enough, convinced the EU to also, bear in mind the EU are now on their 19th or 20th
19th, yeah.
19th sanctions package. But finally, they've decided to stop LNG imports and more Russian crude, which is something you would have think, well, hang on, why haven't they done this a long
Maybe they'd
time
have done
ago?
3 years ago. Yeah.
But for a fact that they've only done this because they feel obliged to because Trump's gone all in on this sanctions package to hit Russian
Yes.
energy. But the one thing, EU being the EU, yes, they've done the right thing here. However, the LNG stop order doesn't come into effect until 2027.
Yeah. Oh,
So
okay.
no rush, lads. It's fine.
Took me a minute. Yeah, I'm a little slow this morning, but yeah, we're really doing something in a couple of years.
Yeah, maybe.
And so I think it's just interesting though. I do think you're right on the sanctions package, and I think the pressure that you're seeing. And then the other part that's my favorite thing, and like the perfect sort of such a Trump type-esque statement, is that their report came out that they lifted restrictions, the White House lifted restrictions on the long-range missiles and says Ukraine can do with them what they want. And Trump's like, I never said that. Them missiles are their missiles, whatever they do with, like basically he was kind of like, I'm not explicitly saying you can do whatever you want with these missiles. Like, I'm just kind of like, if you happen to get these missiles and do things with them, that's totally a surprise. You know what I mean? Like, it was just an interesting sort of indication that I think the administration, to a certain extent, has signed off at arm's length to, like, giddy up. Let's see what happens. And at the same time, not at arm's length, like you said, with those sanctions. And it is interesting, too, just kind of to know, and I've talked about this a few different times now, like we got 2 billion bushels of wheat exports sitting in Ukraine and Russia both. And both are really showing signs of significant logistical damage.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
in having big issues in movement and all of these other things. Like there was an Algeria wheat tender yesterday and there was zero clear Russian participation. So if you're telling me that Russia is going to be an aggressive exporter of wheat, like people have been telling me for a while now,
Where
what
are
the
they?
hell, why are they not participating in a tender that they've been winning? Why
Yeah.
is France still getting Egypt business? There's just a lot of signs in the cash market that there is a big problem in the Black Sea. The U.S. is continuing to see strong export demand. We're really on track to have a solid program here, and the cash market is showing signs of firming on the spread side of things. And so, I think we have to really watch what takes place between Russia and Ukraine. Obviously, I've been saying this for a while, but I think we're going to start to see the signs that the grain movement is truly being
Right.
impacted in the region a lot sooner than later. And we are seeing still, Ukraine is also way far behind on harvest. They're struggling with a lot of quality issues, and so there's just a lot of things that we have to pay attention to there and that I'm watching that I think are going to have big reverberations throughout the market structure here over the next 7 months, give or take. Moving over to China, obviously, trade conversations between the administration kick off tomorrow, mañana. We're supposed to run through the
Wow.
weekend, apparently. October 24th through the 27th is what they have blocked off on the calendar, according to the article that I read. And so we'll see how that goes and where that leads. All things are on the table, Besant said yesterday, and that
Everything is on the
they,
table. Nothing is off the table. It's all on
nothing
top
is
of the table.
all of it is on the table, and some of it is software controls. That's the administration came
Yeah.
out yesterday and kind of floated those. I think that's the only thing they have left
Yeah, right.
at this
Although it
point,
must be
right? I
noted
mean,
that the auto sector have already pushed back on this and said, "Well, hang on, this would include like assembly robots, etc.,
yeah.
which we rely on from China. Please don't do that. You've already done enough damage."
Right? Yeah. Could we not and say we did? But no, we might. You don't know. And so we'll see what happens there. Obviously, at the end of the weekend, things could be great or they could be, I don't know how they get much worse. Like, I feel like it's National Lampoon's
Yeah.
sort of look around you,
Well,
Helen. We're in the seventh circle of hell. Like,
you
it couldn't be,
you say that how can it get much worse? But obviously, previous
it
weekends and
obviously,
Thursday, Fridays, we've had like de-risking ahead of potential headline risk over the weekends that we kind of knew was coming. This weekend, Bezant and Chums, they are on the National Lampoon's trip to Malaysia to meet to kind of the pre-meeting ahead, a meeting about a meeting with the Chinese
right?
delegation. So we're pretty much guaranteed headline risk this weekend, and then the following weekend is when Trump actually does meet Xi. So even more so. So as me and Michael Brown were saying this morning, when do you start front running the de-risking? Because are you risking this afternoon? Bearing in mind that Friday also has CPI data, and they're only releasing that because they have to. Obviously the government data and all that stuff is still shut down. But yeah, it's becoming very interesting on front. It's almost the Mexican standoff of de-risking at the moment. At what point in the week, in a few weeks' time, we might be de-risking on a Wednesday.
We're just de-risking everything all the time. See, that's the thing, though. Like, if you've been in grains, though, we've de-risked for months now. Like, we
Yeah,
have been
right. Like, where has
de-risking
everyone
since
else been?
January. Like, we have not added risk in a hot minute. I miss risk. And so, yeah, but I agree. Like, the outside markets, everything else, really, when it comes down to it, like, we just don't know what's coming next. Like, and we obviously saw that with the cattle bomb that we got yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, friendly fire, the call's coming from inside the house. Where
Yeah, right.
Trump's
Exactly.
basically
Oh God, that's
like,
brilliant.
hey, beef prices are too damn high. Those damn ranchers, like we have a control over what the price set is at the store. And when it comes down to it, I say we, like I'm a part of the team. I wish I was a rancher. That'd be super cool. But
Do you know what?
alas, I am not.
There's been times when I've dreamt of a similar. Just put me in Montana somewhere. As long as I've got a river running through the ranch at some point where I can go down with my fly rod, that's all
Yeah,
I
there's
need in life.
a river runs through it. You can do your Brad Pitt impression. But
You
yeah,
know
so
me.
we'll see. We'll see what happens with the China trade talks. The biggest thing that has my attention, and I think I've been talking about this on this very show several different times, is the flooding and the big issues that you're seeing. Bloomberg finally posted an article today about it. And really what you've got going on is we'll get a clearer picture of how bad the damage is probably in another couple of months. Like, it's not going to be something like everyone always wants to see immediate signs when harvest hits that there's a
Right.
problem. Well, you don't. That's not how cash grain works. Like, I've said this a million times. Cash grain oozes. Right now you're seeing Dalian corn prices under pressure. Or they had been under pressure because the farmers were panicking. They don't really have an ability to store corn.
Yeah.
The last couple of years they've been able to store it. It's come off dry. Right now it's wet and moldy and needs to
Ugh.
be dried. And, when we talk about China corn drying, it's important to kind of remember it's not like the US, where a lot of people may not even understand that how US corn drying works. But in the
Yeah.
US, we have big, beautiful tower dryers that are capable of drying thousands of bushels an hour, you know, close to perfection, and put them in the bin nice and cool and ready for their winter slumber.
Fuck
In
them up.
China,
Yeah.
they basically are hand shelling this stuff and spreading it out in roads to just naturally dry down. And, that's just it's
Now,
not
I'm
gonna
no
be
expert. I'm no expert on this, as we know, but that doesn't seem anywhere near as sophisticated as the US model.
it's less than ideal. And I'm not gonna say that they don't have drying capacity, because the government has been trying to increase infrastructure and things like that, but it's really not been a focus over the last handful of years. And so this could be something that would be huge in the sense that, right now, in my opinion, if China were to step in after the first of the year and want to buy corn in size, we don't have enough.
They
And I know that's counter to everyone's sort of, "Oh my god, we got so much corn," but we don't. Yeah, we'll have room. We could introduce another, 500 million bushels of sales, which is a chunk. I mean, if we had the yield. Now, if we have a yield that's sub, and I would say that based on what's going on in cash and the conversations that we're hearing, the corn yield could be in line or below last year. You trim that much off from the overall production standpoint, and you try to add any sort of exports in size, because I truly believe we'll be over 3 billion in exports in the end. And this is my opinion, just looking at cash structure or whatever. But, we just really have to be careful that China doesn't step in and all of a sudden determine that it's cheap. Or, like we said, that we have a positive sort of development here over the next 10
right.
days or so, which might be advantageous to them. I don't know. We'll see. There's just things to be watching. We're going to remain volatile. We traded up to 4.25 on the board here today on the December board, 425.5, which is a new high for the move, and has run into some selling, which isn't surprising. Farmers love round numbers. I love round numbers. I'm not going to make
You
it
all
sound like
love round numbers, let's be honest.
I love 4.25. I'm like, let's put target at 425 futures, so you probably had some targets filling, some people being like, whoa, this is the best we've gotten in a minute. You did see beans kind of surge as well. They tried to peak above that 1040 mark on the November. I'd like to see us close above that. If we do, I think we work towards the 1060 mark next. But we've had a decent run in beans. We're up 35 cents or so, 36 cents from the low, set there, whatever, last week or whatever. And so let's see. I think at this point, we're probably going to remain range bound, which isn't overly exciting, but
Toptober.
we've got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things to watch that'll probably be supportive as we move ahead. But with the unknowns that we have still kind of plaguing this market, it keeps the buying in check. It kind of keeps the farmer a bit more in the way of I don't want to say an aggressive seller, but they're going to be conscious of opportunities if they pop up. And yeah, we'll see where we head. Tomorrow's Friday. It'll be a whole new day.
It is indeed. And do you know what? It's Friday for 24 hours, all day tomorrow, all day. But Angie, thank you so much, my darling, for getting on and telling me everything that I need to know about agricultural markets in general, and just my my daily therapy with you. Um,
Right?
but listeners, thank you
Just so
so
you
much for
are
tuning in. Yeah, right. Like, two crazies make a right, surely.
right.
But thank you so much to all the listeners as well. Whatever you're doing today, do stay safe, keep it tight, and we'll see you for tomorrow's Grain Blast. Well, tomorrow. Goodbye,
Right.
much love.
Have a good one, guys.
See you later.